What was that disgusting thing someone you were dating told you, and it changed your image of them?
Experience 1. I had one date with a woman who told me she was in therapy for domestic abuse. I thought it meant she had been abused by her spouse. Through talking with her, she mentioned burning her daughter with a curling iron. On purpose. That's when I realized she was the abuser. I was glad she was getting therapy for it, but I couldn't keep dating her. Experience 2.
I followed you a couple of times, but you never noticed me. I love you. From now on, you're not allowed to speak to other men.
All that from the same guy, from the same night, from the first and only date. Experience 3. He relayed the story of how he had thrown a full milkshake out of a moving car at an old lady who was walking on the sidewalk and hit her full in the chest. He could barely get the story out, he was laughing so hard. I thought this was something he had maybe done when he was in middle school and trying to show off for his friends. That would have been bad enough. No, he did this when he was 21. What a plain freaking asshole. Screw you, John. Experience 4. The only other gay guy at my rural, deep south, high school was super cute. I was infatuated. He was out and very confident, which I really admired. Finally scored a date with him, and he ran over a squirrel on purpose on our way to dinner. Laughed his ass off when the tires lifted and then crunched. My soul left my freaking body, I swear. Experience 5. My ex completely changed after we got married. When I asked him why he'd lied to me about who he was before, he literally said, "I didn't think you'd like me if you knew." Damn straight. I was like, don't you think I kind of deserve to decide that for myself? Now I just can't trust you at all. And he said, but then you wouldn't have married me. Surprise, surprise, we got divorced. Experience 6. Not really dating because we had only one date, but this guy on a first date proudly tells me about how when his ex kicked him out of the house, she owned the house, he took an upper decker in all 3 of the toilets in the house, meaning he'd poop in the tank, and he'd poop, his literal feces, between the mattress and box spring of her bed and the guest bed, and also smeared on the bottom of several kitchen drawers and in 2 register vents. The kicker? His version of why she kicked him out and deserved the poop, literally, he gave her what she was crazy, she got jealous just because she's wasting her life working for the man, and I still know how to have fun and not let money control me? I bailed on that date so fast. Experience 7. After knowing him for like 6 years, he randomly told me he was really depressed I quit my old job and that I had lost a lot of use to him. The wording really threw me off. He was pretty good at masking, so I thought he just misstated it. Surely my use wasn't my career. Oh, no, it was. He said that a big part of his interest in me was my career because he had hoped to have one like mine, and it's how we met, so my switching was a bit of a letdown. Eventually, he clarified that even though I was now making over 5x salary what I made at my prior job and had completely transformed my life, and shared a lot of that money with him, daily, from good food to designer clothes he liked, the fact that I no longer worked in his industry made him sad every day, and he felt like I should have stayed in that industry to help his career by having contacts and advice. But he knew I was selfish and would take that the wrong way. Experience 8.
I'll marry you only if I don't get someone better.
We were dating for 2 years. She was the one who first proposed to me. And it's not like we were not a good pair. Everything was smooth until she said this, and at that point, I just laughed it off. But once I came back home, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I bought it up and it turned into a huge fight, and she said she meant it. So, I broke it off. Experience 9. I was in a drama group and the girl I was crushing on was super sweet. Had been homeschooled, super naive. I never saw her do anything mean. I adored her. There was another girl who had some kind of medical condition that meant she sometimes peed her pants a little. She was very poor and often smelled bad. My sweet crush proactively went up to the stinky girl in front of everyone and asked her,
Is that a new perfume you're wearing? You smell so good.
The stinky girl's face immediately dropped, and she got this look like she didn't know what to say, didn't know if this was mean or not. She replied,
Actually, yes. Thank you for noticing.
and immediately left the room as a bunch of people who witnessed the whole thing laughed, and my crush turned around and let out a huge laugh she'd been stifling. I immediately couldn't even look at her anymore. Experience 10. He told me all about a play he once wrote to humanize people who do R-word. It involved a woman sitting on the stage, pretending to be drunk at a bar, with all these men sitting around her. Then, it flashed back to the days of all these men, showing something that had gone wrong in each of their lives: divorce, losing their job, being rejected for a date, etc. After that, the woman staggers off the stage, clearly drunk. All the men then look at each other and follow her off stage, implying that they gang R-word her because they all had a bad day. Genuinely the worst thing I've ever heard. He was a self-proclaimed feminist, too. Interestingly, a friend of a friend then told me all about the guy she'd been dating for 6 months and how she'd broken it off after he told her about his R-word play. Turns out we'd both dated him. What a world! He's now unfortunately pretty influential in my local art scene, but I spread the word about him when I can. X+9 Parience 11. We had been together 15 years. I confessed to him that I was having self-deletion thoughts and was basically begging him for help. He told me that I was a worthless cunt, he hated me, and that he wished he could kill me himself. Which I found to be very impolite. ETA, the reason I stayed was because I felt trapped. At the time there was every abuse that one could be given except physical, though that was sporadic. Emotional, sexual, and financial. I felt worthless and that I was lucky that someone cared about me, a disabled, worthless waste of skin who suffers from a crippling pain condition which led to depression and anxiety. He isolated me from all my friends and even tried to isolate me from my family. After he said the above, I actually ended up in the hospital with a life-threatening infection within days of him saying that. I had been ignoring the infection because things were so bad at home. I was scared to leave my daughter and my dog with him. Story in my post history. He was mad that I took off for over a week. I was in intensive care and having emergency surgery. I should have been in the hospital for weeks, but between COVID and my threatening to sign out AMA so I could get home to my daughter, I had managed to strike a deal of sorts with the doctors at the hospital for them to let me leave well before I should have. When I came home, he was still angry about me feeling like I had to self-delete. Refused to help me even though I was still very ill and had a giant surgical wound to deal with. And that was when I decided enough was enough. My daughter was old enough to start really understanding how he treats me, and I'll be damned if she thinks this is what a relationship is supposed to be like. It's been almost exactly 2 years of careful planning, secrets, and support of loving friends who welcomed me back into our group with open arms. I am just waiting to hear back about housing assistance, and then I and my daughter can start a new and happier life. I'm happy to answer any additional questions. If someone reading this is going through something similar, I promise, you can get out. It might take time, but you can do it. Just keep putting one foot in front of the other and don't give up hope. You are loved, I promise you are. Experience 12. Months after telling my ex how I felt sexually violated by him and ongoing abuse and arguments, he revealed to me that his first thought, after I told him how I felt, was, "I'll show you what it's really like to be violated." And he essentially confessed to planning how he wanted to R-word me, down to the detail. I already resented him, but this made me genuinely fear him. Experience 13. A couple of months after an ex cheated on me and I gave him another chance, one of his friends who I liked hanging out with confessed to being into me. I told my ex/boyfriend at the time what happened, and he said he knew and even encouraged his friend to try to hook up with me because you guys flirt all the time, so go for it and we'll call it even. It made me realize how emotionally manipulative he was, trying to bait me into sleeping with someone else so I didn't have a leg to stand on anymore. Experience 14. My best friend was 16 at the time, I was 18 and my ex was 22. He kept telling me how hot it would be for me and my bestie to make an intercourse tape for him or have a threesome with him. He would bring up three-ways all the time and I told him to stop because it made me uncomfortable, and he only ever wanted to have threesomes with my underage friends. Experience 15. When my ex-husband and I were having fertility issues and we had an appointment with my OBGYN to figure out what the issues were, the doctor asked him if he was able to have children. He said yes, then told me that he had apparently gotten someone pregnant. He had told me that I was the second person he slept with, then after this revelation he said I was the third, later he said I was the fourth. He then proceeded to tell me that he knew this girl at an RV park where his mom lived, he lived there too, and that he had gotten her pregnant. The story changed several times about what happened, starting with her having a miscarriage the day after, and ending with him saying he probably just dreamed the whole thing. Another one is he had gone to visit this woman he knew was dating online before he met me. We had only been dating maybe 2 weeks at this point and he told me the plane tickets were non-refundable. After 5 years of asking him if he cheated on me and him saying no, one night he finally said yes. Then he changed his story again, that he didn't actually sleep with her and she just gave him a hand job. It made me realize I couldn't ever trust anything he said, and that he would change his stories and lie so he wouldn't upset me, and I wouldn't leave. Experience 16. I deal with sciatica. It's excruciatingly painful and makes walking difficult. I walk with a pretty severe limp. This was new to me 3 years ago and new to her. She didn't see the extent of my pain displayed due to the amount I was working at the time. Our first time in public, walking from the car to Home Depot. She stops dead in her tracks, turns to me and says,
You need to stop walking like that. You're embarrassing me. People are looking.
The tone of utter disgust and anger in her voice was repulsive. I felt so hurt, betrayed, and disappointed. My entire image of this woman that I loved had shattered. Everything was downhill from there. Several months later, I had been taking an antidepressant, and she offered up the task of refilling my monthly pill sorter because I was struggling to keep up with my meds. Each day had its own pod. I was on so many different meds at one point that I just assumed that everything was in the pods, and I'd wake up and take the whole thing like a shot. She failed to inform me that after X day, I was out of said antidepressant and it needed a refill called in. As a result of this, over the course of the next several days, I had increasingly worsening withdrawal symptoms. One day upon returning home with my son, I collapsed on the porch steps and blacked out. He banged on the door and was screaming for me to wake up. I eventually was somewhat mentally there, but physically could not get up or say anything. She finally came out, pulled him quickly into the house and came out and nudged me with her foot several times and with that same tone from before, said,
Get up. This is disgusting and you're embarrassing me. The neighbors can see you.
And then proceeded to leave me on the porch for 15+ minutes until I was able to crawl inside. There are so many other instances of this from this woman that I can't even remember half of them, but I remember how she made me feel. I don't ever want to date again. I've never felt so betrayed in my life. Edit, just to clarify, I wasn't perfect in this relationship by any means. I had my downfalls and caveats, mostly mental health-related depression/ADHD/autism struggles, but I was never cruel, mentally, emotionally, or physically abusive. She would get chronic migraines and would have to be sleepy for 3 days, and without hesitation, I did what I could to tend to her, check in on her, and treat her with the human decency she deserved. But when I'd have multiple days of burnout/depressive sleep episodes, she would get irate and scream bloody murder at me. I really hate that I decided to type any of this and am mentally reliving it. Yuck. Edit, wow. I never expected this much attention on here. Thank you all for your kind words. I'm doing okay, or as good as I can. I'm still terrified of relationships or even trying to date. Perhaps one day someone will fall out of the sky and land in my lap, but I won't get my hopes up. Yes, I've left her, she couldn't wrap her head around the why. It's truly mind-boggling how she saw no wrong in her doing and still doesn't. I hate that I'm stuck dealing with her for at least the next 16 years, but I do my best to keep the peace, although sometimes it's to my own detriment. It's just not worth it to set her off because it can last months of her lashing out and being shitty.
We hope you enjoyed listening to today's stories. If you want to see more stories, check out these videos or check the links in the description for more videos. And don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. And ring that notification bell.